God is more concerned about conforming me to the likeness of his Son than leaving me in my comfort zones. God is more interested in inward qualities than outward circumstances. Things like refining my faith, humbling my heart, cleaning up my thought life, and strengthening my character. That quote is from the paraplegic Johnny Erickson Tata, who's wrote amazing books on suffering. She still sits in a wheelchair and struggles and suffers every single day, and she can say something like that. And what made me come to something like that, a quote like that? Here's the story of Moses and the Israelite people. They miraculously make it through the Red Sea. And basically, after that, they wander in the desert for 3 days without water. And that's the max you can go in the desert before you dehydrate and die. And I just found it so intriguing that it seemed like they walked right into a test. And maybe, I don't know, the full context is not there, but maybe the people of Israel celebrated this miraculous moment in the Red Sea and then said, "Peace out, God." And as a result, God desires relationship and ultimately led them into the desert to be tested. Why is it a test? Because on the other side of this desert, the 3 days without water, is water. So this tells me something about God. God is sovereign. God will provide, but God also is there to form your character. And this brought up so many questions for me, honestly. Well, why didn't God make it rain? All these things. But ultimately, I do think and believe that Exodus chapter 15, verses 22 through 24, is the first of 3 moments where the Israelite people are tested to have relationship and not reliability on the reality of their circumstances, right? I don't know about you, but there's so many times in my life where things are going well, and I really don't focus on him. But there's also the suffering I've had in the last year and a half at work where it's like, okay, man, I have no choice but to rely on God. I need to ask him about this, and it's 12:30 p.m. and I just finished lunch. Or it's 3 p.m. and I just finished a meeting that went terrible. Or whatever it is for you, the suffering moments are there to stretch you and grow you and become more like Jesus. Why? For his glory and for the world to see Jesus through you. Ultimately, right now, I'm diving into what God has done and giving him glory, and can testify that no matter the suffering, God has the water. And I love that there's 3 days there. I thought about the New Testament where Jesus died and rose again on the 3rd day. And Jesus talked about himself as the living water with the woman at the well, that he was the water that was needed, and she would never be thirsty again. And how ironic if the Israelite people would have gotten it, that they would have never had to drink again. They would have made it into the promised land. And they would have made it into a loving relationship with God. And instead, on one instance, with wickedness and too much prosperity, water drowns out the wealth and evil-ridden Egyptians. And then on the next instance, on lack and seemingly emptiness and lack of water, God blesses the Israelite people. Why? Moses calls out to him. And I want to talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, because I want to do some research on and some prayer and ask God, what does this answer mean about you blessing them with water, and how you did it is pretty incredible, pretty miraculous. But for one thing, for you and me, it's this, to remember that we are in relationship with a sovereign God that has everything we need. So we must stay hopeful in that concept that God is everything we need. And then that faith of reading Scripture and applying what you read will grow and increase. And God has prepared you and will continue to prepare you to handle what it is he has for you next in your season. So if you're going through suffering right now, what I've been telling myself is I don't want to miss what God's trying to teach me, because too often I've been focusing on everybody else that's causing the suffering. Instead, I've been trying to stick the mirror in front of my face and say, what is God trying to teach me, and there's been a couple things, but one of them is that God reserves the right to use anybody he wants. He reserves the right to use anybody he wants. Secondly, he is all I need. In my weakness, as Paul says too, God is strong. So when I fleshly can't respond or fleshly can't even come up with a probable solution, I know somebody who can. And ultimately, if I respond with him, good fruit comes and his light shines. And that's what we want to do on earth in our short life here. We want to let his light shine through our actions. And only he can do that. Only time with him can allow that fruit to come in your life. So spend time with him, surrender your life, and remember, you serve a sovereign God that has water on the end of this desert season that you may find yourself in.